Greetings and welcome everybody to the last daily update from the silent retreat. This is day 3 that we're going into. We changed our schedule around a little bit. On Sunday morning, we move our debrief time, looking back over the weekend, to Sunday morning, and we close out the retreat by sharing communion together. And so I wanted to give you some of a backdrop of going into this morning. Yesterday was an interesting day. I think generally, as I reported before, it's been a good time of sitting and talking to people and finding out about the things that they're facing. What happened last night was rare. And what happened last night was that participants ended up doing a lot more work in their head than they did with each other. And that resulted in very, very little to share at the debrief meeting. And that happens occasionally. I've been doing these long enough that a variety of things can happen along the way. Some of it is that the dangers, if you will, of facing silence and sitting in silence is that it becomes very, very intimidating. Partly because we use a variety of things in our lives to dilute the power of some things that are just lurking in the background. And we know they're there. We all know that they're there. But we end up putting them off, locking them up, condemning those areas of our heart. And that's what this is. Last night resulted in just a couple of different reports or stories about the day and some realizations. And essentially what that ended up doing is, by what was shared, the other participants lapsed into doing comparisons between the story they had to tell and the story that other people had to tell. And actually, it's very instructive. It is very indicative of our own spiritual journey and how often we compare what we're experiencing, what we're going through, to someone else. And the reality is I want somebody else to have a worse story than me, because then I can simply dismiss my story. And that, I think, is what happened last night. Now, this morning, I hope, would be a very different story, but I kind of doubted it. The trajectory was set last night. I certainly hope that Jesus did some work last night over the evening hours, and sitting and reflecting on what happened and the things that they were talking about, and not resorting to the typical strategies they normally use. We had a couple requests to leave, and my response back was, I understand that, but I would certainly encourage you to see it through to the end. You never know what's waiting at the other end. And there's so much, like I said, there's so much about this that is reflective of our larger spiritual journey, our usual ways of handling things, of confronting hard things in our lives, is to shut down, to compare, to move away from it, to distract, to minimize it, to a variety of strategies we use really to avoid dealing with these things. And even though they're being gently brought to us by Jesus in this context, with grace and quiet and silence, not bombastic or beating anybody over the head at all, it doesn't really matter. I mean, even in a lot of ways, even lightest touch, it hurts. And I suspect that we probably have some retreatants that are in that category, and that's okay. That's okay. This is very much a part of the journey that they're on, and there's a part of doing any journey that I have to own what's mine. And in a lot of cases, we'd much rather own somebody else's story than our own. And that's exactly what I think probably happened. Now, I don't know that. I don't know, and none of this has been confirmed. I'm drawing on just previous experience of doing these for a long time. And it's pretty hard to break our typical patterns. And when we come into a place for only 2.5 days, and we come into a place and we continue risk avoidance, we continue hiding, we continue all of those things. And the irony is we keep getting the same outcomes, even though we seem to be looking for external external solutions for internal problems. And that's kind of what I think is going on here. So I'm not outing anybody. I'm not ratting anybody out to anyone else. It's just it really is observation. I'm not sitting here being frustrated because it's not going the way it should. It goes the way it should. I'm just catching up to what the story is in regards to that, and that's what today is. And I've been known to be proven wrong on a Sunday morning. A lot happens in just that short amount of time. We started our debrief at 7 and we adjourned at 8:30, and now we're almost over 14 hours out. And so a lot of things can happen in the evening, a lot of things can happen in the morning after breakfast, and people are milling around and reading and walking, and that's really all part of it. So the challenge is handling our own spiritual journey with grace and freedom. And why would we, the biggest challenge, I think, is that we just treat it like anything else, any other accomplishment, any other checking of the box that we need to do. And and that's the general observations. I will make one last entry in these daily updates once this morning is over and I have some time to mull it over and get back to the Northern Command Post, as I lovingly refer to my office at home. So there's that report to bring to you. Where I'm sitting is another one of these locations that are a favorite of mine. To some degree, this feels a little bit like a sanctum. As you can see, I am surrounded by trees. And if I turn my back, because right now I'm looking at the chapel from where I'm sitting, if I turn my back, it's like everything disappears and all that's around me is these trees. And a lot of them are what some people would identify as scrub oak, and they hold on to their leaves all the way through the winter. And it's a place where you kind of enter into the nature and God's creation, and can just sit and listen and hear the birds and hear small varmints running around and things like that are very much a part of the warp and woof of this kind of little ecosystem that's here. So it's a great place of contemplation and silence and consideration about about my relationship with Jesus and what if anything I need to calibrate or recalibrate, because that always happens with us. We tend to lose our calibration spiritually, and we need to get some calibration back. Sometimes it's through people, sometimes it's through experiences like this. So this ends up being my little getaway. It's easy. It's a very easy location on the property here for people to walk by and never notice, and unless you know what you're looking for. And that's one of the reasons I like this place. So that's kind of the overview. It's a quick update in a lot of ways, because we haven't met yet. And my updates in the previous 2 days have always been at the end of a day, or a review of looking back at the day. So this is the anticipatory one before we actually meet, and I look forward to it. It's never dull. I wouldn't say never, but I don't get disappointed, because it's God's agenda, not mine, and it unveils itself rather than I know what it is going into the meeting, because God's up to, and Jesus is up to, so much more than I can see and understand. And my job really is to enter in with grace and mercy and acceptance, reflecting the Father's heart for the students that are here as participants. So that's it for the morning. I will have some concluding thoughts when I get back to home. But thanks for joining me. I appreciate your efforts in supporting and praying for us, and anything else that you can, or anyone else you can point in our direction. We're heavily considering putting in another retreat in the spring. But the only thing is that retreat has to be fully funded before we actually launch it. And that means that participants pay here $120 a day. Now, when you consider room, board, pretty much everything, that's a pretty good price, but at the same time, it can be really steep. So we need to develop a donation base to make it possible for students to afford coming to something like this. That one will be fully funded and supported by SGI. It won't be from CCU, which we have so graciously been given funds to offset some of the cost for our students. But prayerfully consider if you want to partner with us and help us to raise the funds to launch a fourth retreat in the calendar, in the school year. So that's fall and spring. So anyway, like I said before, thanks for joining me, and I will check in later today. And as always, love you. Later. Bye.